Gingerbread Men are one of the most famous and recognizable cookies of all time.
I'm pretty sure they're the only cookie to have their own nursery rhyme.
These holiday favorites are sweet and spicy little biscuits, typically shaped in the form of a vague, cartoonish human shape.
We typically see them decorated with white icing to give them adorable little features like clothes and faces, as well as using fruit or candy or other small food trinkets for the eyes or buttons.
Yeah, that said, you can still see gingerbread cookies that are shaped like all sorts of figures. Dogs and birds, cats, stars, angels, Christmas trees. Hell, last year we made gingerbread versions of our trademark goose and skunk spirit animals. Person shapes just tend to be the most popular and most common one, however.
While gingerbread men theoretically can be eaten any time of the year, they're most closely associated with Christmas time or winter. This likely comes from the notion that spices like ginger and cinnamon give a warming sensation in the body, and thus they became popular during the colder months, similar to pumpkin pie.
Yeah, the addition of molasses and brown sugar gives them like a dark brown color, which is actually kind of uncommon when it comes to cookies, because like most cookies tend to just have that like sort of like beige, like yellowy color. Actually, like that sounds like it should be like a real color now that I think of it, like cookie yellow, or like it'd be cute. Like, how do we get a hold of Pantone and like make that their official color of the year for 2022?
I did some searching, and apparently both Duron Paint and Benjamin Moore have paint colors called Sugar Cookie. Hopefully the colors look more like a cookie on the walls than they did in the little paint blob pictures online, though.
That's cool. We'll look into that if we ever have to like repaint the apartment, or if we get a house someday. Who the fuck knows? But yeah, like you never really think about it though, because like if you'd never seen a gingerbread cookie before and you saw it next to a bunch of like butter cookies, you'd be like, oh shit, these things are burnt. Like they're just like I just like thinking about it. Like they're like the darkest color like cookie out there.
Yeah,
like,
that's not chocolate.
Yeah, that's not chocolate. Obviously, that's still just like a regular flavor. But yeah, like nah, they're not burnt. There's nothing special. It's just there's molasses in it. So if you're wondering what molasses is or are, if you're British. Molasses is basically like if sugar tasted bad but was actually kind of good for you.
So, in other words, it's nothing like sugar at all.
Sort of.
When sugar gets made, they have to boil it repeatedly to filter out impurities. One of these impurities is molasses, which is a weird plant syrup found in sugarcane that actually contains a surprising number of nutrients and vitamins.
Shh, don't tell the sugar crusaders that, though. That, like, if you tell them, like, some types of sugar could actually be, like, good for you, then their heads might explode. Anyway, these molasses, they generally get boiled out of the sugar during that process because, like, molasses have, like, a very dark, pronounced flavor. It's kind of like honey, but, like, even stronger. It's like honey on steroids. Like, it is sweet. It's sweet tasting, but it also just does tend to taste kind of like dirt or feet or, like, dirty feet. Or, well, more like dirty feet covered with honey. Yeah.
In spite of that, molasses does have a lot of cooking applications, notably, as we mentioned, gingerbread. It's not as popular as it used to be, probably because it used to be more of an ingredient that was made available out of necessity rather than desire.
Yeah, so remember how back in the banana bread episode, like episode 5, we covered and theorized that banana bread, it came out during the Great Depression. It mostly was like a means of avoiding throwing out bananas, which seemed like they were already spoiled. Molasses is kind of in the same boat. You're basically like taking something that's a waste or a byproduct created by making normal sugar, and you're recycling that so you could actually use it to make other foods. Like, today, we live in a very spoiled world where everyone is privileged and they can whip out a magic pocket machine like cell phone. You can click a button and you have expensive organic food shipped directly to your house within 2 hours. And then after you cook that organic food, they throw the leftovers in the garbage and you complain about how they have nothing to eat, and then the cycle begins all anew. It's a beautiful thing. And by beautiful, I mean fucking sickening. Because, Americans throw out about $150 billion with a B, dollars of food every year. Like, eat your fucking leftovers, people. It's not rocket science. Like, upwards of 40 million tons get thrown away every year. Motherfucker. Anyway, In the past, people used to not be spoiled pieces of shit, and, they valued their food. So they wanted to get every last bit of value out of it. So rather than throw away some weird old murky plant goo, they figured, hey, this stuff is still edible, so, let's throw in some pastries and shit.
Because of that, it was the cheapest sweetener available for centuries and was the most popular type of sugar in the U.S. up until the 1880s.
Yeah, but unfortunately, over the last century or so, it seems like molasses fell out of favor because, well, life just became so damn good for the Western world. You could still find it in stores, but it's, you're just probably more likely to find a recipe that features pubic hair in it than you are to find one with molasses in it with a Google search in 2020 or 2021.
Fun fact, did you know that in 1919, a huge molasses processing plant in Boston exploded, which released over 2 million gallons of molasses out into the street, destroying part of the city? Over 20 people died. Wait a minute, that's not a fun fact. That's a horrible fact.
Yeah, actually, the Great Molasses disaster of 1919 was a really, really big deal. It injured over 150 people, and it lived on in local folklore in the Northeast for decades. Basically what happened was there was this gigantic storage tank at the Purity Distillation Company in Boston, Massachusetts. This storage tank failed when they added a new load of molasses into it from a transportation truck. The warm new batch that they were adding in caused temperature changes in the storage tank, which was cooler, and this it created thermal expansion, and thus kaboom.
Sounds kind of like when there's a nuclear meltdown, except things were very sticky instead of radioactive afterwards.
Yeah, basically what followed was one of the most comically tragic disasters in American history. A 25-foot tall wall of molasses exploded forth, and it flooded the surrounding area. It was traveling at 35 miles per hour. It destroyed the elevated surrounding tracks overhead the area. It demolished buildings, and it swept away trucks out into the harbor. And as mentioned, a lot of people were hurt and killed. 21 people were killed by it. Jeez, what a friggin' way to go. Drowned in sugar goo. And then, morbidly, when we were reading up on this, it said that, rescuers couldn't find some of these, victims, for days because their bodies were just, glazed over in molasses. It was just coating everything in the area. Candy-coated corpses. Fuck.
Apparently, for months afterwards, molasses ended up getting tracked all over the place in the city. In buildings, stores, through the subways. It was to the point that people said everything you could touch in the city ended up sticky, even areas that were pretty far away from the disaster. Supposedly, legends say that the whole area ended up reeking of molasses for years and years, and even after it was fully cleaned up, several decades later, you could still get whiffs of molasses on warm summer days.
Holy shit, what an insane turn of events. It's just crazy. A giant flood of this sweet sticky syrup. It sounds like a fun time. Maybe even kind of kinky. In this situation though, part of the issue was that it took place in January. So you ever hear the phrase molasses don't run in winter, it's thicker than molasses in winter. Molasses is a really fucking thick and sticky when you cool it down. When it's really cold, freezing temperatures, it gets very thick. So instead of getting hit by a wall of delicious runny syrup, it was getting run over by a steamroller made of brown sugar, basically.
Yeah, it said it was going 35 miles per hour, which for us doesn't even sound that fast. But for a liquid just moving,
yeah.
And also considering it was 1919, cars probably weren't even going that fast then.
I mean, I used to be an EMT, so I can say 35 miles per hour doesn't sound fast, but actually if you get hit by a 35 mile per hour car, you could die. 35 seems really slow when you're driving a car, but when you're hit by a car,
you're hit by anything going 35 miles per hour.
You get really hurt. So just imagine a thick ass wall liquid thing just coming at you. That what do you even think in that situation? Just what and how, and then as you're done with that thought, you run over and you're just drowning. Jesus. It's actually kind of funny because it sort of coincides with the decline of popularity in molasses in the 20th century. I don't know, but like I wouldn't be surprised if like some people, at least in the Northeast, subconsciously were just like when they're reaching for like a sweetener, they're just like, molasses? Ho, no thank you. I'll stick with good old non-murderous white table sugar, thank you very much. Like, imagine if like people were running around like mobs with like pitchforks and stuff, and they're just like tearing down molasses pits. Like, we'll make sure this never happens again. Jeez.
Anyway, another key ingredient in gingerbread is ginger.
Whoa, who could have seen that coming?
We covered ginger in our pumpkin spice latte episode before, so we'll give it a little bit of a review. Actually, ginger, cinnamon, cloves, a lot of the same spices that go into pumpkin spice are also used in gingerbread, come to think of it.
Huh. That's a good point, actually. Why the hell haven't basic bitches latched onto gingerbread men the same way that they're obsessed with pumpkin spice lattes? Like, I don't think it's because of the sugar content or something, because, like, you know, hell, I wouldn't be surprised if, like, cookies actually have less sugar than pumpkin spice lattes do. Yeah. Those things are shit. What if it's, like... What if it's deeper than that? Like, what if the pumpkin spice crowd has finally gone woke? Like, what if, by referring to them as gingerbread men, we're just reinforcing the subconscious attachment to the patriarchal setup of modern Western society, like some sort of strange implicit Stockholm syndrome, and by eating these cookies and calling them men, we insist that by default all beings, whether they be made of flesh or made of cookie, are just assumed to be male. And thus, by detaching yourself from the shackles of these gender-based cookies, you can free yourselves from the endless cycle of misogyny and self-loathing. I'm just kidding here. We all know that the pumpkin spice crowd isn't smart enough to do that kind of critical thinking. So, nah, come on. They like carrying coffees around because it makes you look important and cosmopolitan to be like, oh, I got it.
For that matter, why are gingerbread lattes even a thing when most of the ingredients in gingerbread are already in pumpkin spice lattes? Does anyone at Starbucks know that, or are they all too jittery to realize it?
Joking aside, though, we could probably chalk this all up to the same reason that pumpkin spice foods became popular in the winter months. Cinnamon and ginger and all those other good spicy spices, like, they create a very warm sensation on the tongue and in the body when you eat them. So, conversely, gingerbread, it tends to be a wintertime food in general, with gingerbread men specifically getting a lot of playtime at Christmas.
Now, ginger specifically is the weird spicy skin that gets served alongside your sushi, which you're supposed to eat as a palate cleanser, but most people throw out because they're stupid.
Yeah, and besides that, ginger is also a plant that grows edible roots in the Gingerbreaceae family, used for making soda, cookies, and types of curry. If you live in an incredibly sheltered life and you've never seen just like regular straight ginger in non-powdered form, well, it's like if a guy suffering from hypervolemic edema with really, really dry skin and psoriasis buried his hand underground. Or maybe if you like took like a really fat reindeer and cut off its antlers.
Beast little reindeer.
I know we're really doing a good job making it sound tasty, huh? Really though, ginger is like, it's actually really ugly looking. It's a good thing that they make it in powder form, because like it's kind of gross looking.
Yeah, some of them are, yeah.
They're really gnarly.
Yeah. Ginger first appears in written history in China during the time of Confucius, around 300 BC. It seems to have originally been grown in Asia.
Yeah, it became very popular originally due to its strong, like, spicy flavor, which gave it a good ability to disguise, like, the taste of old preserved meat, which, let's be real, like, there's very little way to make old meat taste good. Even if it's preserved and edible, I don't think they were just, like, whipping together, like, artisan, masterful, like, preserved beef jerky back then, so much as they were just kind of like, yo, what if we bury this chicken leg in the dirt when it's cold out? You think it'll be good in a month? I mean, sure, it was handcrafted, but it was crafted with hands that had also an alarmingly high chance of being covered in cow shit at the time of preparation.
Anyway, ginger was popular in the Middle Ages as well due to its potential medical uses. King Henry VIII supposedly spent time trying to create a ginger concoction that would protect him from catching the plague. Wait, has anyone tried leaving ginger in the sun for a few days to see if it kills COVID? Quick, get our top scientists on this ASAP.
But anyway, as is a running theme here, most of like the exotic spices like ginger and cloves, like they're native to Asia. Like ginger, cinnamon, cloves, they all come from Asia or Australasia, which encompasses all the Pacific Islands, Madagascar, and Southeast Asia.
I mean, it makes sense. There's a reason the spice trades became such a huge deal in history. White people were tired of having their food taste like a wet mop, so when they discovered all these Middle Eastern and Asian people romping around partying with these awesome spice concoctions, you bet your ass they were excited to finally get their hands on some new ingredients for their food.
You think that like the spice trade back then was like the like tech industry now? Like people would be like lining up to get their hands on like the new overpriced branch that was like super fucking trendy at the time. Like, oh shit, you're still using allspice? Pfft, get with the fucking times, brah. They just put coriander on sale. Pfft, fucking dipshit. But yeah, most if not all these spices can only be grown in like very, very specific conditions. And as such, you couldn't have them in Europe. You had to import them, and they became very highly sought after as a result. Cinnamon, for example, that comes from the bark of cinnamon trees. Go figure. And this is a repeat fun fact from our pumpkin spice latte episode, but it's a good one, so we'll repeat it. Anyway, fun fact, cinnamon trees are actually chopped down to harvest the bark to make cinnamon, but the trees actually regenerate, so they don't actually die from this process. So the cinnamon can just be like harvested over and over and over again, and like the trees keep regrowing and respawning for like generations upon generations. So yay, sustainable cinnamon.
Cloves, meanwhile, are a type of flower plucked from the clove tree before they mature, and are then left out to dry, which turns them into hard little branches that smell like a hippie store.
So, with all these spices in tow, Europeans started creating all sorts of cool new recipes and shit. One of these new dishes was gingerbread, which was based on older recipes that come from more eastern areas like ancient Egypt.
Egypt specifically had a confection similar to cake, which featured honey and ginger, which was prepared for pharaohs as an afterlife treat for them after the mummy process.
Yeah, similarly, the ancient Romans and Greeks had similar honey cakes, which were utilized in a far less noble manner. We'll talk about that later, but we'll just say it involved orgies.
Wow, that's a hell of a clickbait cliffhanger. But it's for the best. It'll give people a good reason to listen to the next section, which goes over the invention of gingerbread men.
Anyway, this seems like as good of a point as any to point out that when we say gingerbread, right now we're not really talking about gingerbread men or cookies yet. This may not be common knowledge to people who are outside of Totski Culinary Academy, but gingerbread is a type of bread, sort of.
Gingerbread on its own is actually a cake-like sweet loaf, kind of similar to like pumpkin bread or banana bread. Primitive versions of it existed in the Middle East and Asia since BC times. However, the more modern version of it existing as more of a dessert was thought to have been created later on around the 15th century.
Yeah, after the idea for ginger-flavored baking goods was brought over to Europe around the year 1000 AD, a few different versions of them started floating around. In the 1400s, you had Polish bakers that created a very, very bread-like version called Toruń gingerbread, which is actually still being baked to this very day in traditional bakeries in Poland.
There's also records of gingerbread loaves being cooked by Swedish nurses, where it was used to treat stomach ailments around the same time. Man, I want to get cake as medicine.
Yeah.
Imagine going to the nurse in school because you felt nauseous or wanted to get a test or whatever, and instead of being given shitty stale saltines in an ice pack wrapped in one of those industrial brown paper towels, you got to just eat some gingerbread.
That would be awesome. Those brown paper towels, like those were not good for anything except cutting people.
They are the opposite of a ShamWow.
Yeah, you could cut a bitch with those brown paper towels. They didn't absorb water, but they were sharp as shit. And somehow they trusted them with every like third grader on the planet.
God forbid you had to blow your nose with one of them.
Rest in peace, nose. God. But anyway, come the 1500s, the sweet cake-like version had made its way over to the United Kingdom finally, based on a definition by the British lexiconographer John Barrett, who defined it as a type of cake made to comfort the stomach. What the frig is a lexiconographer anyway?
Apparently, it's the study of an act of compiling definitions for words. Sounds like a pretty sweet gig. Especially during the Middle Ages when fact-checking and sourcing didn't seem particularly popular.
Yeah, like, man, could you just imagine being, like, into, like, studying vocabulary and stuff back then? Like, you're just writing in your dictionary, recording all these definitions down, and then you come across a word you need a definition for, and you're just like, fuck, what's a dunderpate? Let's see, nothing here, nothing in this book. Fuck it, dunderpate. Noun. One who steals the undergarments of unwed women and uses them to cook a stew for long life and health. Nailed it.
Like, there wasn't fact-checking because you were just making the facts.
Yeah.
You were making
You were inventing the facts.
But yeah, so by the 1600s, gingerbread loaves were popular all over Europe, both as a tasty treat and as fucking medicine. Yeah.
Yeah, and before someone steps into actually this discussion, ginger does have antibacterial properties, which is why it is popular in toothpaste and oral rinses. It can also act as a mild anti-inflammatory, which helps it to ease muscle cramps, be it from exercising or just because you're on your period. And last, but certainly not least, the fact that nurses and shit were giving it to patients with upset stomachs, well, they were onto something because probably the most acclaimed benefit from ginger is that it helps ease types of indigestion.
So cool. Go ginger. Just don't chug a bottle of ginger ale and then ask why your stomach hurts afterwards. I don't think we need to explain why. I hope we don't need to explain why. Though actually, my grandma would give me ginger ale sometimes if I had an upset stomach. But it was just like a glass, and I wouldn't chug it. I would drink it at a normal pace.
I question if ginger ale actually, like, I don't think ginger ale in stores has enough, like, ginger essence to actually do anything, but, like, maybe if you get, like, the fancy, like, all the, like, craft sodas or whatever out there, maybe you could get something out of there. But, like, and my parents did the same thing. My mother,
pretty sure it's Schweppes.
yeah, my mother was like, here, have some ginger ale if your
Canada
stomach
Dry
hurts.
or whatever.
It tastes good, though, at the
It
very
does.
least. But, yeah, so... Anyway, while gingerbread loaves were pretty mainstream by the 17th century, we still need to look up the actual origin story for gingerbread cookies, specifically, if we're talking about gingerbread men for this episode. So, with that, let's get nitty and let's get gritty, because now we'll be taking a look at the invention of gingerbread men.